highlighting Ken Bauer's Hiding in Plain Sight, Unmasking the Secret Combinations of the Last Days. Chapter 7, Foreign Policy, and Chapter 8, The CFR. Notes by Nate Richardson. Bowers. Chapter 7, The American Foreign Policy. The government orders the discarding of food so they can keep agriculture and market prices high. One man was fined for giving his excess to the poor, rather than discarding it. They call for famine assistance, but they create the famine. They ban trade while giving aid. Food is, for these reasons, 7 times more expensive than it could be. Third world countries are not allowed to see first world countries, and thus continue to depend on benefactors who ship them supplies. Third world farmers cannot sell their goods at a good price because of foreign aid being dumped on them. The best way to promote peace is to invite other nations to join with us and live under our Constitution. Stay out of foreign entanglements, but do aid victims of international wars. Don't enforce democracy on others. Satan's way is force. The founders endorsed commerce and social relations with other nations, but not alliances with them. Foreign defense policies like NATO and CETO are bad for America, as they can easily get us fighting inappropriate battles based on a requirement that when one member of the treaty is attacked, all others must help. Therefore, these treaties make us military slaves. And pre-mortal, everyone who is on Earth chose agency, so our current foreign policies are making people hate us. Ron Paul speaks against foreign aid and explains how it makes nations entitled and is unconstitutional spending. Bowers. Chapter 8. The Buck Stops Here. On Wars and the CFR Controlling the Presidents. Roosevelt says all political things are by design, not chance. Crassus, Pompey, and Julius Caesar sought to turn the republic into an empire. Helaman 7 verses 4 through 5 give examples of nations controlling from behind the scenes. The Wall Street Journal wrote that David Rockefeller, head of Council on Foreign Relations, was as powerful as the heads of state. David Rockefeller told head of state of Russia Khrushchev to resign, and he did within 24 hours. The CFR, Council on Foreign Relations, a major branch of the establishment, is controlled by the Round Table. The presidency is run by the CFR. FDR's son-in-law reports FDR's ideas were not his own, but were given to him by the CFR. FDR, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, and others gave into this power behind the scenes to get personal power. FDR's son-in-law says the 1932 FDR Democratic political platform was made to get him in and was discarded once he was in. FDR's son-in-law goes on to say that 90% of the people in the CFR don't know who runs it or what its plans are, but are only there for status. FDR says Joseph Stalin trained him. Near his death, Woodrow Wilson admitted to ruining his country from working with the money barons. 12 out of 14 President Lyndon B. Johnson's counselors were CFR members. Johnson did not want to escalate the Vietnam War, but they urged him to. Some of these advisors were personally against this war, but advised it anyway for the CFR's sake. Top military officers say Vietnam could have lasted only a few months. Note: hands were internationally tied to draw it out. For more on this, see The Politically Incorrect Guide to the 60s by Jonathan Leaf. Back to the text. CFR leaders chose to end the Vietnam War after over 500,000 troops were deployed there and blame it all on Johnson. The CFR are the puppet masters of the president. This is like Korihor being used by Satan until Satan didn't need him anymore. Woodrow Wilson speaks of the fear major manufacturers have the unseen organizations which attack those who speak against it. In the book of Wilson, his speeches, he admits America is controlled behind the scenes. These behind-the-scenes corporations use Wilson's desire for more government power to help the people secure more power for themselves. Any increase in the government power is increased in the power of the CFR and the bankers. The solution is to take the power from the federal government and return it to the states, like the Constitution says. Baron Edmond de Rothschild of France saw the creation of the CFR. The book lists people involved in the funding of the formation of the Fed and the CFR, including major names in these groups and major groups involved internationally in their creation. The book shows how these groups are interrelated. The House Brain Trust and Wiseman Group's role are explained, as well as the House as the partner of Wilson. Wilson and House had the same opinions. House wanted one world government. House wanted the Constitution scraped and called it outdated. House wanted Marxism and spiritually mixed. House worked for FDR as well. House helped make the income tax amendment. There's a group called the Inquiry, composed of 100 social engineers. They created the CFR, etc. J. Reuben Clark, an LDS general authority, was a part of the J.P. Morgan Company, and when he heard them speaking of making another world war to get a new world government, since the World War I failed to get them such, he reported this to the church president, Heber J. Grant, who told him to get out of that company immediately, which he did. Indeed, the United Nations was born via World War II. Thus, we see World War I and World War II were attempts to get a new world government behind the scenes. J. Reuben Clark said World War I and World War II were mistakes we were tricked into by appealing to our hearts. The Feds artificially pump up the money supply in the 20s, which caused the Great Depression, and they used that to give money themselves. The Fed knew the market would crash and told certain people who planned to benefit therefrom. These details of how they created the Great Depression via stock manipulation are presented in the book. Overall, it was taking money from the middle class and giving it to the rich. World wars were for the Fed to make money, to alter public opinion about foreign involvement, causing us to become world policemen and to get a world government. No more world wars came after the United Nations came into being. World War III will be to destroy America and Israel, and to get a world government. Joseph Smith and Joseph Fielding Smith spoke of nations uniting as a negative thing. FDR put embargoes on Japan to maneuver them to attack us at Pearl Harbor. Generals were left without info on the Pearl Harbor attack from their higher-ups, who knew, which left them defenseless. World War II brought the CFR into power. The CFR gained power from the State Department, and then Cabinet, then the Presidency. CFR has private meetings which are forbidden from dispersing into the open public, which allows them to plot their agendas. The book lists many agendas and individuals like the head of the CIA, head of NSA, and the Secretary of Interior, the Secretary of Education, which are all members of the CFR. Regardless of whether a Republican or Democrat is president, leading experts and advisors come from the CFR circle. The CFR is mainly composed of billionaires, CEOs of multinational corporations, international bankers, media leaders, university presidents, and other popular figures. Basically, the CFR includes all the popular figures like senators, congressmen, and Supreme Court judges. But there is a representation from the middle-class majority. Note, the senators, etc., are supposed to represent us, but of course it is not like the House of Representatives is represented there properly. It is clearly an imbalanced power. Back to the text. It is ruled by the rich and powerful. The CFR has all types of people in it who encourage radical extreme ideas. They claim to have diverse radical representations in the CFR that make them open to all ideas and fair. The CFR is how the president sidesteps the Constitution and is frontman for privacy private CFR agenda. Reagan was not a member of the CFR, but Rockefeller supported his candidacy on the agreement that he would have George Bush become Speaker as his VP and use CFR members in his cabinet. This is what Reagan did. See Gary Allen, who wrote None Dare Call It Conspiracy. Note, this is a book President Ezra Taft Benson suggested we read in a conference report. See the film of said address, as the manuscript of it was scrubbed of this suggestion. Back to the text. The country is run in a large part not just by the president but by his cabinet. All options the cabinet gives to Reagan are beneficial to the conspiracy. The report they build for the president are designed to point him to a certain direction. Rockefeller said the news has stayed out of their business for years, that they could not have done what they did in the light of the public, that such has enabled his plans for one world government ruled by the elite international bankers, which is said better than the traditional ways of America. The Bilderberg Group calls for putting UN troops on U.S. soil to restore order. They claim there are threats, which are real or false, to get the Americans to go along with it. Then they remove individual rights and put in a world government instead. Largely thanks to the internet, information on these secret CFR and Bilderberg meetings are beginning to come out in spite of the newspaper's agreement to shut down any news about these meetings that get out. People are seeing the difference between promises of presidential candidates and what they really do. For example, Obama rebuked the Iran and Afghanistan wars. He said he would pull out all troops, but rather he put in more troops. Obama rebukes $7,050 billion bailout, which George W. Bush engineered through Congress. Then he did the same, but for the trillions of dollars of bailouts. Obama said he would make government more transparent, but instead made his meetings and that of the Democratic Party leadership in Congress closed. Bush, Obama, and all presidents before them filled their cabinet with CFR members. A CFR message leaked showing that they are purposely denying Africans aid treatments. They call it natural selection, but claim it is to stop the spread of disease. They call for bacteriological warfare to get rid of non-white people once each generation. Bowers lists books about the CFR and what they do in their secret meetings, like The Shadows of Power about CFR and Americans Decline by James Perloff, and The CFR, Conspiracy to Rule the World by Gary Allen. See American Opinion, 1969. Bowers also suggested Secretary of State to Harry Truman. There are many more book suggestions in this book. Clinton from his youth was wanted by a small circle of elites controlling the world behind the scenes. The book goes over another professor acknowledging the rules of the elites and the secret hidings. This was read by Beth Richardson, and you can find these notes at richardsonstudies.com.